Well, I'll just start off by saying that we're talking to educator Ron Murray today. We're specifically interested in your making practice, so how the things that you make as part of your education, and how that feeds into the idea of home and connection to place. So could you maybe just start off by telling us a little bit about the things that you make?
Yeah, as an artist, I suppose, as a little fella, I learned how to make boomerangs from my grandfather, and he'd pick up little bits of stick he'd see, even on the side of the road. He'd pick up a piece of stick and then he'd carve it into like a real snake, and he'd get little bits of pin, cut a pin off and put them in the eyes, and so sometimes he'd leave them laying around his caravan and you lean back on it and think it's a real snake. So I started off making snakes and boomerangs, and that sort of transgressed it. Then I suppose in my when I was about 12, I met a cousin's, got married to David Gobble, Dave the actor, and I heard him play the didgeridoo for the first time, because didgeridoo wasn't from down here. It was a top end instrument, and then I thought, I want to make it. That was my first thing. I want to make one. And then when I went back to his community with him and they showed me, I thought, well, we've got timbers back here that are hollow. I could come home and make them out of them. So, but boomerang making's always been there, and things that we bull roarers or things like that. But so I took the perfection of my grandfather's boomerang, because he was just full on, like the way he made them. And there's no one I know now that makes traditional boomerangs like that. So, and I haven't made one for over 20 years, because they last, I'm down to my last lot, so I'm going home next weekend, and I'll go out the river and find some proper bends, and this time I'm going to document it, because I figure if it's recorded, then I'll just do it on my own video to make sure I get it, because I didn't know the importance of that. But the curing and the perfection of making one helped me make a really good didgeridoo. So I've become known more then as a didgeridoo maker, and then playing sort of happened along the way. I was just making them and playing at different events, and then when I started to do a duo with my wife Sarah, I just got better at it, because when you're playing with another instrument, and the more you play the better you get, sort of thing. So didgeridoo playing sort of happened along the way, I suppose, and then I got better at it, and then a couple of things happened where I got to make a didgeridoo for Muhammad Ali, and that put me on the map. People go, oh well, he's look at them didgeridoos, and I'm a bit different than a lot of other makers. So that happened, and then once you do a few things like that, you get, like I got to play for the Queen not long after that, so that put me on the map again. So I had a few things that did happen, and so then but the snakes, they've always been in the background, and fun. Frankie. And the other thing I learned is how to etch. When I was little, we had an amazing artist in our community called Uncle Sam Kirby. He was probably another one that I'd sit and watch, and he was a funny old guy. And he used to carve emu eggs with a knife, and like 4 of his eggs were in Buckingham Palace.
Wow.
That's how good he is. He was the best in our community. And there was another old guy too, Hilton Walsh. But you don't realise you're sitting around just listening and watching, and then so the etching part, which is burning on wood, I picked that up from him, and didn't take on carving emu eggs. I didn't have the patience for that. It was full on. But certainly listening, watching him, and then my dad making boomerangs. We get together, and when my uncles come over, they all made boomerangs, and all their kids could throw it. So we'd have massive big competitions, that were pretty serious. Down on the lake.
So where's this?
This was all in Balranald, which is muddy country.
Okay.
But Wamba was at Swanhill, but I didn't grow up there. I actually grew up over on a big sheep and cattle station with my dad and 6 sisters.
Wow.
Yeah, and all the materials were there, you know, to work with, and I had my auntie, mum's sister, and my nan. They were full on like artists. Like they would make feathered flowers, and you couldn't tell the difference between real flowers and their flowers. You know, you have feathers and their weaving of. So my mother was Tatiara Nurrinjeri from South Australia. So her nan was wove baskets with that style, and they were seen as the best basket weavers in Australia. Like all the Aboriginals were jealous of it. And so then feathered flowers, that sort of, you know, had that side of it. So all around me was these amazing artists that, just, and again, sitting and watching, you know, and that's the Aboriginal way of learning.
So it's a really communal process, like everyone's doing it together.
Together,
and the kids, do the kids get involved?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, even knitting. Mum was a good knitter, and so you had to knit your things to go to school, you know, your jumpers, and so I learned a lot of girl things, being the only boy. Even hockey, you know, I played hockey with the girls, because they were pretty competitive. So it was amazing growing up with getting that women, the soft side.
So is that, well, you said you want to go back home to make some more boomerangs, that's home? That's
home. That's so when I talk about home, the Murray River is my home, but I grew up on this massive big station with 140 kilometres of Murrumbidgee that runs into the... Jeez. It's a more intimate river, it's not as big, it's not as powerful.
Yeah.
It's the forests are a bit more untouched over there, and so it's full of sights, and so I was lucky I learnt that. So coming to Victoria and working in the Aboriginal community, they looked at me as a real cultural person, you know, like to teach the young ones. And, hey, stop it! Yeah, so I was lucky, just one of them, you know. Right outside our back door was a big 40-kilometre lake, you know, and it's old as Yanga. The lake was actually still got water in it, and as old, they all talk about Mungo, but Yanga's the same, but it's got water in it. You know, it was
So fertile area. There would have been lots to live off in that area.
Heaps. Yeah. We're lucky to you know, our diet was organic veggies from the station. Half a sheep we got a fortnight, and then the rest would fill in with rabbits and fish out of the thing, and wild ducks and emu eggs, and pretty lucky. We never went without.
So when did you leave? When did you head down this way?
I sort of left and kept going back, because I always had a room in the house. Mum always loved having me home, but so I you know, travelled away, went you know, playing football all up along towards Wagga. So I used to play for money, and so best job, most money. You know, I'd go to that club. So I went to all these different clubs, and then I ended up in Western Australia working for a while, and then when I come back, I always knew that I wanted to come work for me somewhere in the community. But that we called him grandfather, but my dad's brother married Auntie Nora Nichols, and her father was Sir Douglas Nichols, the only Aboriginal ever knighted by the Queen. And now my mother's sister married his son. So we had it was very, not political, but political in a way, you know, having him and my uncle. He was very political. You know, and the 1967 referendum was big in my life. You know, becoming a Australian citizen right out of the Flora and Fauna Act. So I knew politically, I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So Dad wasn't an in-your-face political activist, but he certainly did work in the community at times, helping out with, you know, signing them up to vote and things like that.
Wow.
So we had that political side too, and you know, we knew about it. And,
so was it that sort of political drive, you think, that got you down this way?
Yeah. Because old Sir Doug always said to me, if you ever make it in life, make sure you don't forget about the people you leave behind.
So important.
Give them a hand up, not a hand out. He had all these sayings. That we're lucky to have some amazing elders in my town. Kevin Coombs was another one that he was in ended up in a wheelchair, got shot. But he went on then to Captain Australia in the wheelchair Olympics, and you know, we've seen the struggles of being a young Aboriginal boy in the hospitals. He often talked about that. And so they were really positive elders, you know. Yeah, we were lucky at that community.
And they could obviously see something in you that you were going to go
maybe
do things.
I think so. Yeah. And
you were getting paid to play football, were you?
Yeah,
That's pretty impressive.
yeah. Back
So
then.
sportsman and...
But it was racist area, I tell you. You know, to play back then, you got abused every game.
Gosh.
Got horrible names got called to you. So you had to put up with that. But you did, you know, the real good ones. Could put up with it. Yeah, you had to. Yeah.
Constant battle though, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was. But having Dad, you know, my dad was a good sportsman. He was a boxer and a buck jump rider. He was really good, and so he could help. You always had elders that you go to and say, you had this problem, how did you deal with it? That passion was to work with, I suppose the biggest passion is working with young ones in trouble. Okay. So 30 years now working with Parkville and Malmesbury.
So you do, I mean, talking about your making practice, that's what you do quite a bit of that with
the boys. So
I
started off making didgeridoos with them, and they all wanted to make one. At the moment I'm doing a possum skin and a kangaroo skin rug with them. Yeah, so that's a bit of an ordeal. It's going to take us forever to do it too, by the way. But I've been tracing the hands at the moment and then getting them to design the hand.
I was just going to say, is this, are they all Indigenous or have you got a mix of people you're working with?
When I first started that program down at Parkville, they were getting called racist, the boys, and they complained to me that they were getting called racist. And I said, well, how come? They said, well, the non-Aboriginal boys are saying we're racist because we don't let them in. So and I went to management and said, look, why don't we let them in? They said, oh no, we can't, it's an Indigenous program, it's Indigenous money. I said, yeah, but if we can fit 16 in the room, we've only got 4, let's share it. And that's how it happened.
Nice
So now I've had all sorts in now. Sudanese are very keen on them.
that's great.
Yeah.
What a unifying thing for
Yeah.
everyone in there.
What is it about the, so you know, I mean, you could be talking to them and telling them a story, which you probably do as well, but what is it about the actual making that's...
they're continuing an ancient art form is one thing, but the other thing I find where I really can get to them is with stories. And stories have only sort of been coming big for me. I always told stories, but just I've seen a shift in probably the last 8 years. I got invited to India last year to represent, me and an uncle to represent Australia, and that's when it was an eye-opener for me to go over to India, and they've got the same problem. A lot of their stories are dying out, and so we went to Delhi with an uncle. We got sent by the High Commission, and we were treated like kings, because you go to each city we went to, the Australian consulate picked us up. They just dying to see an Aussie, you know. Pick us up in these consulate cars, and we stayed in beautiful. It was pretty good. And you know, going into was Delhi, and I was going into. It was like going to the botanical gardens. It's the only way you could describe this place. Lots of sort of mosques and stuff in there, and you could fit 2,500 people in this. What do they call them place? You know, you sit down and then the stage, it's built in, not an auditorium, that space.
Amphitheatre?
Amphitheatre. Yeah, it was an amphitheatre. Beautiful amphitheatre. And so the first night the Prime Minister came, you know, to welcome us, and here was 20 guards. And I was in the front row and the guy's machine gun was pointing at my foot. I was pretty uncomfortable. Jeez. Anyway, then I looked, but the next day we had to do stories, and there was 14 storytellers from all around the world. And I was telling the kids, you know, about meeting their Prime Ministers. But in Australia, we go up and we pat him on the back and tell him he's a good... And if you're not doing a good job, we could smash a chook egg on his head. They couldn't believe it. I said, you know. So I was telling them, they were laughing their heads off.
But they wanted you, because you were talking about preserving
stories.
stories.
Yeah.
Was it crafts as well?
No, more stories that was. And yeah, so we're going in, and I felt someone looking at me, and I looked out the car, and there was a massive big billboard with me and Uncle Larry on it, looking at us. Look at you. So they were famous for it, you know.
In India, yeah.
Yeah, in India, but it was so story. What I find in the prisons, in the juvenile justice centres, I do not prisons, but I might use a story. So even if I meet the Sudanese and African, I only know one African story because I don't believe I shouldn't be telling it.
Yeah.
But knowing that one story, it's a really good story about a crocodile and a little African boy and trust. Or do you do a good deed after a bad deed, or a bad deed after a good deed? It's all about this crocodile. And I've got them. And then I look at the Sudanese or the African boys and I say, right, what do we have in common? And they're looking at me, they don't care. And I say, well, what do you do if an elder tells you to do something? Oh, we do it. Yeah, like us, you know, and we make fun out of it. But once I get the commonality in this connection with them, I've got them. I tell so I do a lot of storytelling in there, and through that COVID, I was zooming in, and we've got a couple of young ones with pretty severe disabilities in there at the moment, but one thing they love is a story, you know.
So.
Yeah.
We're also interested in this sort of idea of using your hands and working with materials as an important thing. Do you think that's critical to what you're doing with these boys? Yeah,
for sure.
What do you think it does? Like, what is it that...
Their sense of achievement when they get it, because etching is really hard to do. So for me to start them off, they really need to practice on a piece of board, but sometimes you haven't got that time. And what I found with a possum skin, it's really hard to burn, to etch on, because you can burn through it. It's fine, but the kangaroo skin is like burning on here, so it's really easy. So, and putting a handprint is so easy, you know, you just trace it. And it doesn't matter if they aren't very good at burning, I can fix it up, you know, but to burn it and then you say, well, you make a design for the inside of the hand, and amazing what they turn up with. Like the one the other day I did, he was just red and yellow dots right around it. You know, I use them paint pens because they're easy, rather than the paintbrush. And then the other one, he wanted circles. So I started off with a circle in the middle, the palm, and got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then he went yellow, red, black, yellow, red, black, and it came stunning. Another one, I said, what about he put a diamond in the palm and then kept going out with yellow, red and black. So it nearly describes their personalities, I reckon. Sometimes if you really looked into it, probably would. Whereas Jackson, the other one, he was really quick, just yeah. But it still looked all right.
Beautiful to me.
Yeah, they did. I didn't know. I haven't got any. I might go upstairs. Yeah, no, I think we're upstairs. Yeah. But the other thing too, you know, we go into the history of storytelling and get right into them, yeah. Because you don't have to be able to read. A few people can't read and write very good, but to memorise, I tell them, put a, we can go into the music room and record it for them, so they can listen to it. That's the way I learn too, sometimes when I get a new story.
Yeah. So with the making that you're doing, it sounds like you're doing it mostly like with someone or for someone or in a educating role or some kind of collaboration. Is that always the case for you? Would you ever do something entirely on your own for yourself? Or is it always part of
sometimes they want to give you something too. You know, sometimes they get painting and they want to give. I've got one upstairs that a guy gave me, and that's a bit of an honour. You know, and sometimes I've made one and give it to them too. We do a swap.
Yeah.
Or if they've made, I did a swap with a Ned Kelly heater with one of them made in metalwork, and I swapped the ditch for him. So we do that some. But the sense of achievement, and I was going to say before, I missed it now. Like when you, in that they do a good job, and then the staff, the guards or whatever, gee, you're good. And that's what I want. The most important thing is that when I make something with them, I try and do it, say like, now give this. The sense of giving, you know, we all know that. You know, same with me. If I make a didgeridoo and get $2,000, it's good, but you give that $2,000 didgeridoo away, it's even better. Like even like harmony, I made one for our little fella, didn't I? And but that for that me to see Harmony have tears in her eyes is more important to me than having money. You know what I mean? That someone that makes you feel good.
What about the materials that you're talking about? Like you're talking about animal skins, timber. Are they really important?
Yes.
Because they tell a story. Is that what it is?
For sure.
And connection to Australia, do you think? Or
Give an example. We made, after building this building with Matt, and have this sense of recycling things. That's important too, you know. So much of our stuff gets thrown out. So I did this project with the boys at Parkville that we'd make a table, and everything in it was going to be recycled. And the table was brilliant. And we made it the burl. I'd actually swapped a didgeridoo to get that piece of wood, and we polished it and we filled in all the gaps. Then we put the legs were made out of sleeper backs, like the stairs, on the legs, and then the boards on the bottom where you could put your magazines were offcuts. And any screw we used, we picked them had to pick them up from a building site. You know, ones that are left. So I'd be walking and looking, I'll grab that screw. And we pretty much made it like that. And the boys burned a message on it to the elders at ACES, and they spelled elders wrong. And the elders just loved it, you know, because that one spelling mistake too. And they didn't get, they can't read and write very good. So that's, and whenever I go there to ACES, I do a storytelling thing there, and they do this long walk, like a long walk. The school ends up there, so I always go there. And when I see that table, there's like a sense of achievement, and to see it's still used, and it's pride and centre in this big conference room.
Do you think it hangs on to something? Does the material hold on to part of the story?
For sure.
For sure.
Like when I see that, I remember back, you know, some of the boys even that were involved in that, and then, and sadly, you know, some of them don't make it too. You know, sometimes there might be a sad thing to that thing that you see. I remember that young fella, and he got out, he might have overdosed, or he might have fell off a train, or so there's a bit of that too. It's not.
Not all.
Yeah. And sometimes you need counselling over it too. You know, I never believed in that stuff, but I do now. After years of doing it, it's good to talk to other people about it. And you know, I come home, I tell my sons, you know, some of the things that the boys might have done, or just so they hopefully they don't make the same mistake, because some of it starts off innocent, you know. Sure, you know, might have been a car accident and rolled the car and killed the girlfriend, or you know, some of the pretty horrific situations, but pretty innocent.
And they just set off on a particular path.
Yeah. But it's good to see them, even cutting up these kangaroo rugs. They're about $250 a skin, so cutting them is, you've got to try and get the most out of them, and then the little offcuts, you know, say, well, why don't you make just a little wristband, you know? So we have a bit of that too. You know. Yeah.
So I'm interested in what you're saying, because my particular interest is connecting to the land, and from what I can hear, you're talking about like the making is. So I'm interested in how the making facilitates that connection, and you're talking about the making happening as a communal thing. So does that mean that the connection happens
at a collective?
At a collective level?
Because sometimes the dynamics in that can be not just one thing. Yeah. Because as I'm making it with them, they might tell you something about what's going wrong. They might get anonymous so and so over another unit, or they might be someone's been racist, and so and I'm going to punch him in the face. So you can cut that off. You know, have you thought about telling him, or you know, that did upset you when he said that, rather than, you know, be a leader rather than just there's a whole persona they try and keep up with being tough, and so you can there's little ways you can fit in stories without them knowing that. You don't want to be a preacher or tell them all the time neither.
What about you living down here now? Does this area feel like home to you in a different way, or?
Funny, I read that when you know, in Sarah when she sent that little note to me. My mum, they were there's 13 kids, and they lived in border town in South Australia, and her parents were alcoholics. An Irish father, he come back from the war, and her mum was Aboriginal, and so they got out of the house and went around the corner and lived with the grandparents who were teetotalers. But there was another family too, their first cousins that were living, and for years I didn't even know. I thought they were all brothers and sisters, because when the welfare were going to take them, the grandparents threw them into a horse and cart and took off from South Australia and came right down through Victoria and got to Swan Hill in a horse and cart.
Wow.
And one of the little girls died on the way. So it was a full-on journey, and with the welfare not giving up, you know, she kept harassing them. And I always thought they were sisters, because once you're in an Aboriginal family too, like you're raised in one house, you're a brother and sister. So on that, the cousins on the other side, they were Jara as well. So if I say I'm not Jara to my aunties, you're Jara, but I can't politically, I can't say that.
Why?
Well, in a way, Aboriginal way I can.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of Aboriginal groups become so political in their areas. So I'm connected to Jara. I certainly do feel home here because of going back to this old Tommy Logan that they descended from. But so like if I sometimes I might do a smoking ceremony, but I always ring Rick. I say, Rick, I want to smoke a couple of boys in the centre. Do you want to come in, or can you? No, you do it. You know, I got a couple there. Did them last week. They were having bad dreams. You know, so I use that cultural stuff. To make them feel better. Yeah. Or now they want their room smoked out. They reckon there's a bad spirit in the room.
Keeps you busy, doesn't it?
Yeah. So it's good. And there's Aboriginal workers that come in too.
Yeah.
That support me.
But do you see yourself here? No.
Not really, because the Murrumbidgee and the Murray are my heart.
That's home.
That's home.
Yeah.
But saying that, one of the reasons why we shifted here 20 years ago, me and Sarah got invited to play at a reconciliation concert at the town hall, and it was sold out. It was one of the best musical nights I've ever had. And we left there, and we were living in Hurstbridge at the time. We come back and said, we've got to shift to Castlemaine. You know, that's because the spirit that was here, and the good, and the people we met. What a fantastic place we thought. This is
at the town hall here.
At the town hall, yeah. Hey, stop it.
So it was the spirit of the place that really drew you here.
Yeah, and I think if there's that much goodwill with the reconciliation, it's got to be a good place. And it was 3 hours from my mum and dad.
Right.
Too, but we did want somewhere in between.
So you're on the way
to
where you...
Yeah. And it was the choirs that were here, and the Steiner School too was the major thing too. You know, having our kids go through there. But it was all here, and it is. It's a. Now, you know, when I come here, I was a real socialite. You know, Saks was about the in place, you know, the hang place to hang out. Now I want to be a bit of a hermit. I just can't. I want rest.
Can I ask you about the space that you're living in now, whether the activities the making activities, if that makes a difference in how you feel about the actual building that you're living in? Do you think that's...
Yeah, it does, because often I'll have little nights here with, you know, a father might just bringing his son out, and or cousins that come over. It's a little... Yeah, they love coming out here, you know, and we've had some great nights cooking up here, and you know, musical nights, and it's a great spot here for that. Yeah.
It's just so clear that people are such a big part of it, and that you wouldn't, it's not a solitary, you know, like the sort of Western tradition of the solo genius, and that the art is kind of like this person in their own space
And so
creating.
many interesting people around here. Like, you know, you just wouldn't even know until you sit and talk to them, or, you know, they're doing the train into town. What do you do? And then they tell you what they do, and you go, oh wow, gee whiz.
So can I ask you something, just again, as going back to my research? So how do you think that, I don't really know how to ask it, but how, like, so say so I'm not from Australia, I'm English, came here as a child, and I'm curious about how to connect to the land here, which I feel sort of driven to do because I live here, I'm raising my kids here, but I also feel constantly, is it correct? Like, is it okay for me to connect here?
I reckon.
And
Because there's so much work out there. That's what I believe. People that aren't from Australia, how could you not? You know, you look at the news today, and they're wanting to enlist the platypus. You know, and that's a real hurt for us to see the rivers. And this place has been trashed, Castlemaine, but there's so many land care groups around here, and you meet people that are in these groups, and they're passionate, and non-Aboriginal people that are passionate about fixing it up. That's heartwarming for sure, and they come and ask. I don't think enough doesn't get asked of us, you know. They talk about the Murray, the living Murray, and we always knew it was alive. You know, we always knew that if we don't treat our mother, which is the land, no matter where we are, every Aboriginal group around Australia calls the land underneath them, even their tribal lands, their mother. So she's sick at the moment, you know, and just showing with all the bushfires and you know, climate change. That's just, we know that she's sick. So you know,
So
you're saying that as a non-Aboriginal person, what can you do? I think that one of the first things that they should, land care, Clean Up Australia Day, and these sort of things, and more education, showing people why not to throw rubbish. I still can't believe people throw rubbish out of a car.
Oh God, no.
But you see it, you know. We come down here and see a McDonald's bag out the window.
It's always McDonald's,
we're picking up. I know. Because I wrote this story. I haven't put it out. I made it up. And it's a story about a platypus, and it's and he gets washed out. And I made it up when Brodie was little, and then I continued telling the story to Louis when he was little. And it's got a lot of different verses, but he's related to everybody, and he gets washed out and lost, and it's his journey to get back to his parents, and who helps, and they all help because he's, you know, I'm related to you, the snake, you know, you lay eggs, but in it, without realising, now I've looked at it, it's a time to put it out because it's got, instead of the Dreamtime stories, the scary ones about spirits, that's a Safeway bag floating down in the thing. Don't go near them because they'll swallow you up. You know, they're like a kid story for us of a ghost, or and what's them great big things, the big hairy monsters that come down, they're bulls. So I'm having to go at the farmers for putting their thing in, you know. But that is probably my biggest worry for this country is the rivers. Because if people treat them as, they're looking at them as drains and supply, where we look at it as living. And everybody wants a bit of it. Houseboats, you go to a Chuka and see how many houseboats are on it. And they're all, they go for a leak at night, they wee in it and vomit in it, and all sorts of stuff goes into it, poor thing.
It just gets sucked into irrigation too, doesn't it?
Yeah. And we don't need to be doing
rice farming.
Rice farming, you don't need to be doing it.
Western New South Wales. And
and they're at the start. You know. Like we go, you know, just lately we've been going down to Guildford swimming, and you know, but I go from here down. I know McDonald's, they've been here for years and years and years. Doesn't give them a right to have the cattle inside pooing in the waters. I know there's a few more local young ones coming into Guildford now complaining, but you know, there's ways around it. I know I sat on the CMA committee for about 6-7 years, and that was always going on about quality, not quantity. And we were going to farmers and say, well, let's fence off that swamp. We'll actually pay you for loss of land for your sheep. And that was one way around. And let's fence off and make a 30-metre buffer zone on the creek, and should see what they look like now 10 years down the track, versus the farmer next door that didn't want nothing to do with it. But there should be laws. You know, it's kids can't swim in it without getting sick.
No.
You know?
Just want to point out
we're right.
You're okay.
Yep. As long as I lead by 3.
Great.
I can make the
We don't
sky
want to
in
make
20.
you-
No,
we
no,
don't
I can
want to
make
make you
it.
late.
No, I can make it.
So I guess I just keep coming back to that thing of how the making is that important to the idea of home? So
yes and no. You know, I know just with myself, the making of things. I know when we travelled when we were young, me and Sarah in our combi, and how that art actually got me around, got us around. You know, music. We pull up somewhere. Frankie, stop it! And we get our instruments out and do a bit of busking. I made didgeridoos on the way and sold them, boomerangs, and we went into communities and done, got invited to do cultural stuff as well. So it's always in the background. That's a good part of it.
I guess it's part of it's necessity too, isn't it? Or I mean, it's. Would you say, like with didgeridoo making, which you mentioned is from the north anyway, but it's music making, isn't it? Which is part of communing with others and coming together and celebrating.
And putting our artwork on it. So for me, putting a platypus from the river onto that is pretty important. You know, and the other thing is, often the boys say, we made a mistake. I say, but that makes it individual. But one little mistake you made, or you can fix it up, but it makes that one art piece individual. So you give them confidence to make a mistake that way as well. It's a good medium to work in, for sure. I did one a little while back. It's on Tim Church website, and I took these Aboriginal kids out to show them how to take a shield off a tree. Where's that shield? I'll be up. It's down here. No, it's a big one. One's sitting up there. Oh, where's it gone now? Oh, but it's a tradition that goes back 1,000 years when they took canoes and that off. And but it's not done a lot now. So we wanted to take this dish off, but in reality it was going to be a canoe to go into a animated story about Aboriginals in canoes up on the Murray. So that worked, And when I watched it, I thought, wow, how good it was. There was a few modern day things. I got the kids to get textures out and draw the shape. But the rest was traditional, we get a steel axe, but then they got them to do little wedges, and I said, and the other thing was being careful, but there's snakes everywhere out here. Watch what you're doing. But I think they were noisy, we didn't see a snake. And the next day I nearly got bitten out there because I didn't have the kids to make the noise. I think I was walking along soft, I nearly tread on the damn thing. So, but that when you see that, and that fits into the story, the art piece, that takes it to another level. Of this beautiful red gum bark coolamon, but really it's a canoe.
It sounds like they learn so much in those processes.
And like even though it was an art project, as we were walking along, I had a bit of wire in my pocket and the axe, and so I showed them how to find a grub. And now look at this tree. See the dust coming down this trunk, and you follow it up. And now the worst thing, I've got to now wear glasses to find it because I've got to put these on and look up. No, there it is, because you've got to look for a little tiny little O where it's gone in, and you tip that, and then we get the little wire and hook it out. Now who's going to eat it?
How do they go with that?
Some don't like it.
So these kids, those that are Indigenous, they haven't had exposure to the wisdom and the traditions of their...
Yeah,
They
a lot of them
haven't?
haven't. Yeah, especially the ones in the towns
Right.
and the cities.
Yeah.
A lot of them in, even the ones at foster care, I love doing them, doing workshops with them, and
Amazing.
for some of them, doing something with their hands rather than,
And talking or...
yeah, is easier than for them writing or computers, and but that can cross over, I reckon, too. A lot of non-Aboriginal kids don't like sitting in a classroom. They prefer outdoor learning, so...
Makes sense.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
With the so the stories that you're telling and the work that you're making with the kids, how much of what you're asking them or saying to them do you think is you passing on like your history and stuff, and how much of it is you? Do you know what I mean? Like, how much is the individual?
Most
how
of
much
it.
is the
Most of it.
you?
Most of it's
Most of it's the history.
It's the history.
So you're a conduit.
Yep.
Do you feel that?
Yeah, for sure.
And
I
that's-
make that important. I make them know that.
Yeah.
This I'm handing it down to you, but you're going to hand it down to your kids, and then your grandkids will learn. So it's that oral tradition.
So you're not the owner of it.
But I'm caretaker.
Yeah, you're a caretaker.
Yeah.
That's really interesting in terms of when you make things. Do you like that urge? You know, like I don't know, the urge to like try something different or whatever. Like
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Where I've really noticed that is in a story. So some stories, they get some people get so possessive of the story too.
Yeah.
And I've had that raised sometimes, and I say no, because if the story doesn't get told, it might be in a book somewhere, but or if we get so protective about our stories and who owns them, no one's going to learn them. Yes, I believe there is rules and regulations on who should tell the story, but David Yanipum, he's off the $50 note. He was one of our smartest ever men, and he was an amazing storyteller. And he was ripped off his whole life, poor bugger. Even his stories got ripped off. But he says, and we are only the caretakers of the stories while we're alive. And I think, gee, that makes sense. Because a story can, even now, I might tell a story that my nan told me, but I've added in like things like the little bird dance. It was an amazing dance. He used to moonwalk backwards up the branches like Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
So now we get it, but the younger kids don't, because they don't know Michael Jackson. So I must be Justin Bieber now or something. But I think that's...
So it changes.
It changes.
It does.
Yeah, in a way.
But something continues.
Yeah, the gist of the story's there, and the moral of the story's there, but the descriptions are different.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the making and the storytelling is that passing on of a history rather than a personal figuring out your own place or something. So is that true? Does that sound correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Which is interesting because I think for me when I make art, a lot of it is trying to understand where I am, which sounds different. Sounds like you're more like telling the history of where you.
I know what you mean. To give an example, we went to Canada a few years back, 2005 I reckon, with these amazing musicians and artists. And when we got over there, they had a day. We had a day off, so the supervisor, she said, we're going to meet in this amazing building. It was on, look at, you see the Rockies, and it was summer, but there was still snow on the Rockies, and so they got us musicians in, and we played music, and they got these. There was 3 Aboriginal artists and about 3 Canadian artists, and they went in. They started painting, and we played music. There was a piano player, a drummer, me on the ditch. There was a guitarist, a singer, and people we went for half a day. And they said, right, we'll meet back tonight and we'll just have a 10-minute discussion about what happened. So we got in there, and 2.5 hours later, we were still talking, and they ran out of film, or the battery went dead or something. But what it come up with, like this one of the most amazing experiences out of the Canadian artist, she painted this picture, and it was of women all painted in white, dancing with their faces outwards, right? And then she started to speak, well, when you were tapping the the drummer was going around just tapping things, even in the piano he had. And when he painted that rhythm, I painted in blue. Or when Ron played the didgeridoo underneath, I painted to a rhythm. And so colours and rhythm in their art come out of their music. Anyway, but at the end, what was so amazing that the Canadian artist, she had painted a picture that she dreamt, and that dance had been forbidden 300 years before, because it was actually a dance where they painted their skin white to try and rid off the white people that were coming into their lands.
Wow.
And the chief was amazed. He was going, "Wow, how did you know to do that?" She said, "I dreamt it."
Wow.
That's pretty.
But yeah, that's when I, that sort of come to me as you were saying that. So I think we've tapped into it enough. Psychologists and stuff should be looking more into, and they are, I know, with people, music and art, especially for
in terms of the benefits that they have, but it sounds like it's doing a lot more there. It's such a process of, it sounds to me as you're talking about this, it's kind of like almost like you're sort of connecting with the land, connecting with that these processes are all about understanding what you were saying, Helen, about who you are, but it's such a different process of discovery, such a community kind of networked feeling, or something about being held by the community that comes before you. Yeah.
And it's the other beautiful experience out of it, I've got a nephew that I taught, and now he's up in Swanee, and he's doing amazing stuff, like with the he has his trials doing it too, because he's up against modern day technology. He said, "Oh, Uncle Ron, I tried to get someone to come out and cut digital with me. No, I'm on the iPad." And he was annoyed that there's probably even an old friend of mine who died a couple of years ago. He was a tracker, and he always was annoyed with the young ones because none of them wanted to come out and learn the art of tracking. Now, in that community, it's all gone.
So things get lost.
They get lost if you don't. So, but to see young Aaron up there in Swanee now, making didgeridoos and boomerangs and coolamans and out of that. He's then got a lawn mowing thing that he takes around mowing elders' lawns, and it's all about watching, him and another young lady, Kia, that getting busy and doing that beautiful thing for an elder, and like one young lady, she hadn't never mowed a lawn, And then he's sending me the little clips of it, because a lot of us are related. And then you talk to them and they, "Oh, who are you?" "Oh, you're Auntie Nancy's granddaughter," and then the big smile on their face that you've worked out where they fit. Because a lot of that happens too, where you fit in with families. And,
that's a big part of it. Obviously, is who you are within the group.
Yeah.
So if you were to go somewhere else, like say you lived overseas for a few years or something, do you think that you would would you keep making the same stuff, or would you be, would what you make be affected by where you are?
I think I'd probably more look into history, of where I am. That's important for me. But going to Canada and America, first thing I wanted to go to the museum, see what they had on the Native Americans, and the storytelling would always be there, I'd imagine. Because you could always they're always interested in listening to how a story, whether it's about a kookaburra, why he laughs, and I know when I was in India trying to explain to the children that we have a bird that laughs in the morning and laughs at night, they couldn't believe it. And that story's a beauty. He's actually there's a love affair in it, and the kookaburra is actually lures this young woman from way away to come looking for his laugh, and she finds him, and he asks her to stay, and it's not a hard decision because he's tall, dark and handsome. so you tell that story over there. They want to know about our snakes. Everyone believes we ride kangaroos and
Yeah,
get a bit bitten, killed by a dangerous animal.
Yeah. We do have a few, don't
Yeah,
we?
we have. Yeah. Yeah, gosh, yeah.
So is Sarah from around here?
So Sarah's from Melbourne,
Right.
but I think with the connection we had when I first met Sarah going to Melbourne, is that she had a love of Aboriginal people and a passion for the underprivileged, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah, especially in the law. And when I met her, and I thought, oh, you're like me, I probably wouldn't try. Aboriginal women are too jealous. No, that could be, but no, it was easier. Yeah, no, she was just the one for me.
Oh, that's
she was.
lovely.
Yeah. I loved her passion, and she's taught me over the years. Like maybe to calm down, don't be angry about that. What happened to you? Because her dad was real. He went to Quaker school, and he was very passive, and where I grew up in full-on racist times where you had to fight better than the next guy, and it's pretty violent where I grew up. It was it's good to meet Sarah. So it was most of the time we did boxing and just to look after ourselves, so we didn't get beaten up.
Wow. It's very tough, and at that point in Australia too, it was just so fraught, wasn't it?
And one of the biggest challenges, I think, especially from my time, was being told you're no good, by non-Aboriginals. I had a girlfriend that I went out with for 9 years, and I wasn't allowed in their house. They were Catholics, and we ended up having a beautiful little girl. That didn't go down too well, I can tell you. It's a really stressful time of life. But she's gorgeous, we've got this amazing relationship now. She's in the 36 and got 2 little boys. And
wow.
we're close, But the way that she grew up was just, beautiful. But when you're told, I think that's why a lot of they don't leave their communities for a start. And it's hard to leave a community to go, but I had to because to make money. When I stayed there, I wasn't going nowhere.
So you knew that?
Yeah, I knew. Yeah. So get out and I look at myself. I haven't got that many. I don't think I'm any more skilled than anyone else. It's just that lucky having the good elders that tell you, no, you are good.
Yeah.
Don't listen to them ones. They're just trying to put you down, or it's envy or jealousy or whatever. So I look at all them people. I let them know now when I go home to this little town. I'm a bit of a celebrity there because they see me on grand final. They're mad, football mad. And on the 30th, I've been invited home to open a sculpture of a frog, a big steel frog at the main street. So the little town Balranna where I grew up, it was probably about 300 Aboriginals in there, and a mission, and the culture's fairly strong, but it's just hanging in there. And but here I get invited home, and Sarah gets on the phone. Yep, right. Oh, you want Ronnie to come and open this? Yep, right. Is any? How much are you paying him? Oh no, we not wanting for nothing. And I said I'd do it for nothing because it's my hometown. My mum still lives there, my sister's there. But usually when people want you to do it voluntarily, what about a tank of fuel or a motel room or at least? But anyway, so Sarah rings back and goes, who's going? Is the mayor going to be there doing a speech? Yep. They get paid? Yep. The rangers that are doing the things around the swamp at the end, we've got to do 5 workshops with kids. I've got to tell stories at the swamp because the bell frog is a rare frog, and it's a long story. But so the rangers getting paid? Yep. So the only one that's going to be there, and he's opening on the day, is Ronnie. And you want to change? You want to, I would say, close the gap between Aboriginal people, and the only one you're not paying is the Aboriginal. And they think they did feel bad after, so they offered me $500.
Yeah.
So that, at least that, and because I went on JobKeeper at the start because all my work went.
I bet it did.
We just had nothing.
Yeah.
So lucky we wouldn't have been able to eat.
Bad year this year.
Yeah. So anyway, sometimes I don't. And that happens a lot. Like, and I know, trying to get into the schools that I did years ago, they expect you to come for $50 or $100. So yeah, I did a few little things on the way. I've got a master's in education to say I had that little thing. I don't know anything more than I knew then, but I've got got a master's. But so it does help, you know, in the eyes of the academics or So now, you know, how come he charges that much? Yeah. But Sarah's good at that. She does all my.
She can help you.
Help me.
Yeah. Make sure that you get a fair.
Get a fair what? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's tricky.
Because we do a lot, you know, musicians and artists, you do a lot of voluntary stuff, but when you can, but it's good to get paid every now and then.
Me too, don't you? Yeah.
I'm feeling like we should probably be wrapping up.
Let's wrap it up.
Rightio.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us.
It's really amazing.
Thanks.
It's a total pleasure.
Good to catch up.